The Monday Night War had its generals, the heroes who got put on a pedestal and celebrated for their contributions to the battlefield. Others got left on the battlefield. No one remembers them and no one tells stories about their time fighting the good fight. So today we're going back to the firing line and we're going to honour the casualties of war while focusing on those wearing a WCW dog tag. Heads up as usual, you guys who watch Reliving the War and you connoisseurs of 90s wrestling will absolutely remember these names. You don't need to bounce into the comments to announce how you remember these guys well and they shouldn't have been included in this video. This one's intended for your more casual wrestling fan who's only heard stories of Sting taking on Hogan, how the Wolfpack went at it with the black and white, the tale of Vince Russo's New Blood, and that time blood ran cold inside a WCW ring. I know for a fact the loyal Reliving the War soldiers will remember the folks mentioned in this video, but let's use this as a way to introduce newcomers to some mid-card warriors who they might not be familiar with. RoadBlock was a highly visible, heavy-duty barricade that was used to stop unwanted vehicles getting into WCW arenas. Someone had a look at RoadBlock and decided, hey, maybe this giant object would make for a good wrestler, and so the road barrier made his way down to the ring a total of 5 times on Monday Nitro, and he jobbed out in every performance. Still, getting 5 Nitro appearances in late 96 and early 97 is quite an accomplishment, seeing as WCW were red hot with the NWO. And even away from Nitro, RoadBlock could be found quite frequently on Worldwide and Saturday night TV shows. He certainly wouldn't be running for Miss Universe, his ring work was nothing special, and RoadBlock would fade into obscurity as WCW hired more and more bigger names. Even when Nitro added more minutes into their broadcasts, they didn't have a spot for our big man, so he was put outside once again and used to stop unwanted traffic. Good work if you can get it. Lex Luger and the Giant were fond of beating RoadBlock up though. He can block cars, he couldn't block the big boys. This guy confused me when he appeared on WCW Nitro, but turns out this was actually Damien 666. The Galaxy character is what Damien used when he first appeared on WCW television, and he kept the gimmick for a few months before switching it up in May 97. Originally trained by Rey Mysterio Sr., Damien was a good performer, but the Galaxy stuff just didn't stick. The final form of Galaxy looked pretty good, not gonna lie. Maybe a heavier version of Jushin Lager, or the lager you'd receive in the post after getting ripped off by AliExpress. Though he was always quite botchy when using this gimmick. Blame it on the mask maybe, blame it on WCW rings, blame it on the boogie, but either way, most people totally forget about Galaxy while vaguely remembering the work of Damien 666. Big Ron Powers. You remember Ron Powers, don't you? He appeared on 2 episodes of Nitro, once on the 27th of January 97 and again on the 10th of February 97. He competed against Lex Luger and the Giant respectively, and my goodness did he put on a good show. Never as someone came into WCW and displayed such great work for someone so new to the company. Never has someone gotten such fan support. He jobbed out in a matter of minutes and he was never seen again. He had ended up taking himself off to the independents and he wrestled a lot around Illinois, though he can always say he wrestled for New Japan, the WWF and WCW. It's more than I can say, it's more than you can say, unless you're Chris Jericho or something. Though that means Ron Powers is just as important to pro wrestling as Chris Jericho is, based on his international experience alone. Maverick Wild. Who comes up with these names? It's fucking wild that this guy got a match on Nitro, but he did have plenty of experience. Plenty of experience losing to guys like Bastion Booger in the WWF, so you can guess how he fared in his one and only Nitro appearance in February 97. Yeah, he jobbed out to Kevin Sullivan, who at the time was telling everyone he was too legit to quit. Funny though that many of the names we've got in this video so far worked in WCW during early 1997. Must have been an experimental time for the company. Like international superstar Ron Powers, old Maverick here took himself to the independents after his cup of coffee in the big time. He could always say he wrestled on WCW Nitro in hopes of getting him more work, though I'm sure he didn't mention he got beat by Kevin Sullivan in around 2 minutes. Ric Fuller shit. This grizzly chap is yet another guy who appeared on WCW Nitro during early to mid 1997, so I don't know. The paychecks for Hogan and company may have been getting too much, or maybe WCW were trying to save dates for the big boys later in the year. Whatever the case, Big Ric Flair made 10 televised Nitro appearances and he didn't win a single match. In one of those appearances, he actually teamed up with our main man RoadBlock, and you guessed it, he jobbed out the Lex Luger and the Giant. The Giant even defeated Fuller, Johnny Swinger and Jerry Flynn in a 3-on-1 handicap match, so that tells you how good Ric Flair really was. I'm already sensing people going to the comments to tell me how great some of these guys were before and after their time in WCW. And yeah, if that's the case, then awesome, happy to hear it. But I'm focusing on the Monday Night War here, those who laid down on the battlefield for the sake of their generals. Ric Flair laid down every time he was in the ring, and he looked up at those bright lights while collecting his paycheck. More power to him. Is this like the pain a bull could potentially cause you? Or does this guy cause pain to bulls just for existing? Either way, Mr. Pain, with a Y, wrestled in ECW in 1995. He then became a mainstay in IWA Mid-South. He came over to WCW where he had the tough task of facing Conan in his first Nitro match, and unfortunately, he lost. It's okay though, he'd be facing big old heavy metal Van Hammer in his next Nitro match, and surely he'd get a win here, right? Well, this match took place at Club La Vela, and all wrestlers were informed not to take a dive into the pool. That spot was getting saved for Rey Mysterio versus Ric Flair, so no one was to take a dip but the Nature Boy. Van Hammer must have been stoned to the bone during this meeting because he tried to put Pain into the drink and Mr. Pain decided to stiff him after the failed attempt. The referee screamed at Hammer to stop, and seeing as he was now all frustrated and worked up, Hammer decided to absolutely plant his opponent on the mat when it was time to go home. According to Bull, he didn't sell it at all when the two went to the back. He packed his stuff and he had worked a few Saturday night tapings before eventually going back to the independents. When Johnny Attitude appeared for his one and only match on WCW Nitro, you'd easily think the name was a cheap shot at the WWF. This wasn't the case, seeing as Johnny used the name in mid-1996 when working dark matches for WCW. He was a power plant trainee who basically did a lot of jobs on WCWB shows, but he did appear on Nitro to face Goldberg, and he decided to wrestle this match while mimicking Goldberg himself. Was Johnny just a really big Goldberg fan, or was he trying to get under Billy Boy's skin? Well, we don't know because nothing was explained beforehand, nothing was explained afterwards. Goldberg destroyed his doppelganger in the middle of his fabled and often criticised win streak, and Mr. Attitude went back to dark matches on the B shows. In 2009, Johnny founded Micro Championship Wrestling. He and Hulk Hogan collaborated when Hogan's Micro Championship Wrestling debuted on TV in 2011, though in 2018 Johnny passed away. And judging by comments made by those who knew him, Johnny was a real nice guy who always wanted to help local talent get their big break in wrestling. Word on the street at the time was that Emery Hill was friendly with Jimmy Hart. Jimmy Hart was also friends with Hulk Hogan, and Hulk Hogan had all the stroke, brother. Emery got to wrestle on Nitro 3 times in late 1998 and early 99. He was defeated by, Lex Luger again? Yeah, Luger, Barry Windham and Booker T. He then had a match against Diamond Dallas Page on Thunder where he worked as The Machine. In this Thunder match it's one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my life. Check it out.
Colossal proportion.
Swear to God, man, I must have watched this clip at least 50 times. The scream before he just jumps off the turnbuckle to crotch himself it's one of the best things ever.
Colossal proportion.
Funnily enough, the Machine gimmick was dropped right after these hijinks on Thunder, and Emery just went by the name Hale for future Saturday night and worldwide tapings. He got released 1 month after the DDP match, and Jimmy Hart must have said, yeah, I don't think I want to be associated with you anymore. Hale wrestled in the XWF before calling it quits in 2002, and unfortunately Hale passed away in 2006 due to kidney failure. He was only 36 years old. Joe Gomez actually worked for WCW way back in the early 90s before taking himself off to the independents and Japan. He came back in 1996, and for someone who's maybe forgotten now by more casual viewers, he sure did get a lot of TV appearances. One match in particular got a pretty decent TV build-up when Gomez, the Renegade and the Rock and Roll Express took on the Four Horsemen in a Nitro main event. There was also a brief, weird period where Gomez, Alex Wright, Jim Powers and the Renegade were being billed as WCW Pretty Boys, and they even had their own little vignette that'd surely entice male viewers of WCW no end. But it was all for nothing really. It's actually kind of funny that these guys got featured in these videos while they continued on jobbing for the stars, except for Alex Wright. Alex Wright kicks ass. The Pretty Boys teamed up to defeat the Dungeon of Doom at Disney MGM Studios. This match, along with a previous match against Disco Inferno, would be the only Nitro wins Mr. Gomez would achieve. Fantastic soft flowing hair can only get you so far in the world of pro wrestling, and his other 7 appearances on Nitro were all losses. Speaking of Alex Wright and Disco Inferno, these two were joined by Tokyo Magnum for a brief period of time, and it's an absolute shame that Tokyo didn't get featured more on WCW TV. Tokyo wanted to be a dancing fool just like Alex and Disco, but he wasn't accepted. He became a whipping boy for Disco and Alex, yet he was still very entertaining. Alex and Disco would make Tokyo a deal. If he really wanted to be part of the Dancing Fools, then he needed to impress them. Unfortunately, Tokyo did not impress and he took a loss in under 2 minutes. And after this match, Magnum disappeared for a while only to return for a few squash matches. His time working with Disco and Alex was good though. The Dancing Fools were quite supercilious and they were quite aloof when it came to how they viewed themselves. Having someone else want to join in with this kind of behaviour while also getting rejected was pretty funny, and again, it's a shame it all ended so soon. Best known for his time in Smoky Mountain Wrestling and trained by Boris and Dean Malenko, Bobby Blaze was actually a pretty proficient technical wrestler who did not get a chance to shine during the Nitro era. He did get a win over Tokyo Magnum on WCW Worldwide, and on the same show he also defeated the Renegade. But when it was time to step onto the bigger shows, Blaze got absolutely crucified. First, he jobbed out to Brian Adams in around 2 minutes on an episode of Thunder, and he then made his way to Nitro where Raph destroyed him in 28 seconds. He had then taken himself back to Thunder a few months later where he got a shot at Scotty Steiner's TV title. That match lasted just over a minute. And his final TV appearance for WCW was another 1 minute squash match, this time teaming up with the legendary Adrian Byrd to do the J.O.B. to Sid Vicious. To highlight Bobby's mantra in the world of pro wrestling, he wrote a book named Pin Me, Pay Me, Have Boots, Will Travel. And you know what, I think I'm going to pick this book up. It's well reviewed on Amazon. We haven't had a tag team in our video yet, so how many of you remember Rough and Ready? They were more featured on Worldwide Saturday Night and WCW Pro, but the team of Dirty Dick Slater and Mike Enos had 2 matches on Nitro. First, they lost to Harlem Heat in July of 1996, and then they lost an 8-man tag 1 month later against the Dungeon of Doom while teaming up with High Voltage. Yeah, I nearly included High Voltage in this video, but I think even casual fans would remember who they are. Mike Enos was one of those guys who appeared on Nitro quite a few times, while Dick Slater was found a few times during the early days of the war. You'd be forgiven for totally forgetting that these two actually teamed up for a few matches, though most of their wins happened when the TV cameras weren't rolling. Let's face it, 2 absolute charisma vacuums here, especially for the era they're working in. Dick Slater may have been around the block a few times in the 70s, 80s and early 90s, but the viewer demographic was so different during the Monday Night War. Also, Dick Slater stabbed his ex-girlfriend in 2004, so yeah, there's that too. Surely, with a name like Mike Winner, our main man must have went over a few times on TV. I bet he said to himself, man, if I change my name to Mike Winner, then I simply can't do jobs. If I stop using my real name, Mike Wiener, whatever, then I'll do nothing but win because it's my namesake. Well, no, because he wrestled as Mike Wiener on Nitro and he became Mike fucking Loser when this J-Bro lost to Glacier on the 7th of October 1996. As a matter of fact, I can't see one victory for Mike Winner or Winner at all during his WCW tenure, except for a house show victory over the Gambler. I bet the referee messed up here or something. Gonna be honest, if I hired a guy who called himself Mike Winner, then I'd book him as a consistent jobber too. If he used reverse psychology on me and called himself Mike Jobber, then I'd probably give him the world belt. Better yet, a Starrcade main event win over Goldberg. You've likely heard of a pro wrestler by the name of the Cuban Assassin. You may also be aware of Fidel Sierra or the Barrio brothers from WCW shows. But the Cuban Assassin made an appearance on WCW television as Top Gun, and he took a loss on the Nitro TV show. He and Johnny Swinger lost a 2-on-1 handicap match to the Giant, and that's because Johnny Swinger just loved losing handicap matches to Paul White. No other way to explain it. Why did the Cuban Assassin start calling himself Top Gun? I don't know. I was going to mention the Danger Zone, but that's a bit too easy. Maybe he thought he looked like Tom Cruise, or maybe he just thought he was WCW's top competitor. When you want a good match on TV, you bring out your Top Gun, and so here, go out there and have a 5-star classic against the Giant. You've got the great Johnny Swinger backing you up, so what could possibly go wrong? 40 seconds, it was all over in 40 seconds, and after competing in one more match as Top Gun on WCW Saturday Night, the Assassin started calling himself the Punisher. This did not help him win any matches. What's noteworthy about Cuba's Top Gun is the fact that he wrestled in WCW, ECW, CMLL and the WWF from 1995 to 2000, frequently jumping from one company to another and back again in order to get paid. Al Green, my. Kevin Nash's former tag team partner in the Master Blasters way back in the early 90s. He made quite a few appearances on WCW Nitro, but he consistently jobbed out. Goldberg, Wrath, Disco Inferno and Tank Abbott all got a piece of Mr. Green, though Al got a big break when his match against Barry Horowitz in 1999 ended in a no contest. Sid may have appeared and absolutely wrecked both competitors, but at least Al didn't have to do another job. Green was then repackaged as the Dog. He became associated with Fit Finlay and Brian Knobbs. He acted like a vicious mutt, he got on all fours and he bit his opponents. And while he did get a Nitro TV win over Evan Courageous, the whole Dog thing was dropped in a matter of weeks. Al stayed employed by WCW right up until the WWF bought the company in 2001. Vince McMahon must have looked at Al's name on the contract sheet and probably said to himself, yeah, we can probably leave this guy at home. Not to be confused with Al Green or another Big Al who wrestled in WCW in 96 and 97, I'll get to him in a moment. This Big Al was associated with Tank Abbott. He showed up in the crowd, you could feel the sexual tension between Tank and Al when the two locked eyes, and as it would turn out, Big Al used to be part of Tank's entourage back in his MMA days, and Al was upset that Abbott was now a big old phony pro wrestling sellout. This would lead to a match at Super Bowl 2000 where Tank's leather jacket was placed on a pole. The winner of the match would be the one to retrieve said jacket, but you can see the issue right away, can't you? If wrestling's phony and if wrestling's only for sellouts, then why is Big Al competing at Super Brawl? The finish of the match is what everyone talks about. Tank Abbott pulls out a knife after he gets his jacket back and he threatens to do some very bad things while swearing like a sailor. The camera stayed on this a bit too long and Tony Schiavone tried to cover it up by saying Tank wanted to cut Al's beard, even though Big Al didn't have a beard. After this one and done match, Big Al was never seen again, and yeah, thanks for coming. Who was he? Who trained him? How did he get to compete on a WCW pay-per-view? Before Tank Abbott's ex-boyfriend showed up in WCW, there was another Big Al roaming around Nitro and causing a ruckus. ECW fans know him as 911, though WCW fans would initially know him as Tombstone before he took on the legendary Big Al moniker. He had two matches, they happened in December 96 and April 97. The first match he wrestled as Tombstone, the second he wrestled as Big Al, and I dare you to guess who he wrestled in these two matches. Go guess. If you said Lex Luger and the Giant, then give yourself a pat on the back because you're absolutely right. Big Al 2 spent a total of 4 minutes and 37 seconds inside a WCW ring combining both of his matches. 59 of those seconds were taken up by the Giant, so yeah, not a great run by any means. We'll wrap up today's video with another tag team, Disorderly Conduct. These two actually made their WCW debuts on the Nitro TV show in July 1997, but they wrestled as the Texas Hangmen, given the names Texas Hangman 1 and Texas Hangman 2 because their original names, Killer and Strangler, may have been a little too much for Turner's TV network. Later in 1997, the Hangmen were repackaged as Disorderly Conduct and they went from Killer and Strangler to Mean Mike and Tough Tom. If someone squared up to you and said their name was Tough Tom, you'd laugh in their face. Disorderly Conduct had 2 Nitro matches. They got wrecked by the Steiner brothers in a tag team title defense, and 2 years later their match with Steve Regal and Dave Taylor went to a no contest, thanks to Sid showing up again to destroy everyone standing in the ring, leading us to believe that if Sid Vicious interfered in your match for no reason at all, then you're likely to never get seen on WCW Nitro ever again. Incredibly though, Mean Mike and Tough Tom stayed employed by WCW from 1997 right up until early 2000. They were featured on Saturday Night Thunder and Worldwide quite a lot, and in September 2000 they wrestled a dark match on WWF Jacked as the Texas Hangman. When this didn't work out, they went back to WCW for a dark match against the Shane Twins, maybe better known as the Gemini on WWE TV. And that was the story of Mean Mike and Tough Tom. So many others I could have talked about here, but as always, I'll leave the floor to you guys. Sound off in the comment section and let me know of other fallen soldiers of the Monday Night War. I'm not really sure if I could do the same kind of video for the WWF. Many of the guys featured on Raw were actually booked a bit more extensively, and there wasn't too many guys who only got featured in 2 or 3 matches before taking off. There are some of course, but I don't think many of them are truly forgotten. Let me know what you think and I'll check out the comments after the video goes live. Hope you enjoyed this one guys. Thank you for watching until the very end of the video, and if you think I've earned it today, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Have a good one, and until next time, please take care.